In this video, I'm going to show you how to get started with PocketBase. PocketBase is a self-hosted backend that handles your database, authentication, and file storage for your projects. So instead of building all those things yourself, you get them in PocketBase once you install it. For this video, I'll first show you how to set up PocketBase and navigate the admin dashboard. Then I'll show you how to send API requests to your PocketBase backend. And finally, I'll create a simple React app to show you how your front end can connect to PocketBase. To install and run PocketBase, I'll create my instance on Sevalla, but what I cover in this video works anywhere you choose to host PocketBase. So now let's get started with setting up and working with PocketBase. To get started, I'm going to deploy the PocketBase backend on Sevalla. So to do that, I can go to templates over here, and then I can find where PocketBase is right here and just click deploy now. And then I can pick any location. Let's say for my location, I'll pick Los Angeles and I'll deploy the template. And I'll go back to my dashboard and I'll wait for this deployment to complete, and then I can continue once it's done. Okay, so we see it's running now. And if I click visit app, I should get this page where it says file not found. Now this is fine because the admin dashboard isn't on the index. So to get to the admin dashboard, I just have to go to my URL up here and just put an underscore and hit enter. And then this will take me to the admin dashboard, which we see here. So here there's a login, and it doesn't give me the opportunity to create an email and password for this. So the way that you do that when you first start PocketBase is you can go over to the logs here. So I'll click logs. And then inside of the logs, there's going to be this URL. So the domain here is the IP address 0000. So I can't use that, but I can use everything after the IP address and the port. So I'll just copy all of this if I can get it, and I'll paste it after my domain. So slash and then everything I have on the clipboard. And then after I do that, I'll have the ability to actually create a super user. So I'll go ahead and put in my information here. So I'll use Anthony@prettyprinter.com, and then I'll put in a password, which is just password 11. And then I'll create super user and log in. Okay, so now I'm here in the admin dashboard, and here is where I can control everything. So the main thing that you want to control in here are your collections, which store data. So right now I don't have any collections with data in them that are interesting apart from the super users. So I'll open up the system here and I'll go to super users, and we see the one record for the super user that I created. Also, there's a user table for regular users. So if I wanted to add a record here, I can put another one. So let's say Anthony2@prettyprinter.com, and then I'll put password 11, and I'll say this user is verified, and I'll just put my name here and I'll click create. So now I have two users in the database, but they're in different collections. So the point is, super users is the collection that holds all of your super users, and the users collection is for all of your regular users. So I have it both here. So of course, in a real project, you would want to create your own collection. So I'm going to create a collection. I'm going to call it items, a pretty generic name, but it will cover a lot of things that you want to do. And by default, it gives you an ID field, a created field, and an updated field. And I want to add, let's say, one more field. So this will be a plain text field, and I'll just call this text. And just keep in mind that you can add all these other types of fields. So JSON, GeoPoints, the typical things that you would think to store in a database should all be here. And of course, if you want to relate to another model, so for example, if I want to relate to the user model, I can click relation here, and then it will let me select the collection I want to relate to, like users here. So since I have it here, I'll go ahead and create it as well. Why not? So user, and then this will be related to the users model. So I will click create here, and this will create a new collection for me called items. And let me just add a couple of records in here. So for these items, let's just say that these are names of programming languages. So I'll put Python in here, and I can either choose a user. So I can choose myself and set selection, or I can leave it blank. So let me go ahead and add another record. Let's say JavaScript is the other, and I'll select myself. Actually, you know what? I'll leave the user blank on this one. So we have no user here, and then we have a user for the Python entry. So you can add as much data as you like. You can search for it, filter it here. you'll be able to use the API that's provided to interact with this, either by viewing it, adding on to it, changing it, whatever you want to do. So before I move on to showing you how to use the API, let me just show you some other areas of the dashboard. It's pretty simple. We have the logs for all of the API requests. So I logged in earlier with the super users. So we see the post here for super users, auth with password. That was to log in before. If I go to settings here, we see some settings I can have through the application. So I can change the name. I can change the URL for the app. We have some settings in here for mail and files, and we can do backups. We can schedule jobs, and we can export our PocketBase collections so we can import them elsewhere. So that's all available, but I want to focus on how to work with the API in this video. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go over to the PocketBase docs so I can show you where to get the endpoints. So I'll just go to pocketbase.io and I will grab the URLs from the documentation. So documentation here, and then web APIs reference here on the left. So then once you go to web APIs reference, you'll see all of the different actions you could take. So CRUD actions are the main things that you want to do. Auth is also important when you want to create users and log in or impersonate, things like that. Real time allows you to use SSE events, files, deal with files, of course. Collections deal with creating like actual collections and dealing with the collections themselves instead of the data inside of the collections. And then we just have a bunch of other things here that should be self-explanatory. But we're concerned with the API for records. So let's get this to work. So I'm going to open up the list search records. And there is actually a JavaScript library and a Dart library for working with PocketBase. But in this video, I'll just work with API. So regardless of what language you're using, you can work with PocketBase. So here under API details, we have the endpoint. So I'll just copy this, and then I'll open up an API client that I can use to send requests over to PocketBase. So let me open that up. And the one that I use is called HTTP. So I'll paste in the second half of it, and the first half will be the URL. So I'll just go back to the browser, and here I can take my base domain, grab that, and then in HTTP, I can paste it in, and then /API goes after the base domain. So here we have this placeholder, basically collection ID or name. So instead of having that, I'll put items, and I'll just hit send, and we'll see what happens here. So I hit send, and I got a 403 in response, and it says only super users can perform this action. And the reason why that happens is because by default, every collection, so let's go to items. So by default, every collection is limited to being used by only super users. So the way I can change that is I can go to edit collection, so the gear icon at the top, and then API rules this tab, and then I can click on this, and I can leave it empty to grant access to everyone, or I can put in some kind of rule to limit who can see it. So for now, I'll just leave it empty so everybody can see it. So I'll save change and confirm. Then I'll go back and I'll send the request again. And now I get some results. So here we see text Python and user, and this is the user ID for the account that I created. And then we see JavaScript here for text. So as you can see, it's pretty straightforward to just send a request to the endpoint and then get the results. So of course, not all your collections will be open like this. So there is a way to make it to where you have to log in first. So I'll demonstrate with the super user. So let me go and copy this base URL. And then what I want to do is I want to go back to the documentation, and I'll go to API records again and collapse that. And what I want to do is I want to auth with password, and I'll take this API endpoint and I'll put that here in the URL field here. Let me remove an extra slash, and the collection ID or name is going to be _ super users. Okay. So once I have that, then in the body, I can just make this a form. And I need to pass two fields. So one is identity. So that's going to be the email that I use to create my super user account. So Anthony@prettyprinter.com. And then the other is going to be the password. And this should be lowercase password. And then my actual password is password 11. So when I hit send here, I get this response and it gives me a token. So let me go back and make my items collection for super users only. So API rules, and then set super users only, and then save changes, confirm. Okay. So now when I go back to this tab and hit send again, I get this error message again saying only super users can perform this action. So what I'll do is I'll take the token here, grab the token, and to get this to work now that I have the token, I just need to create a header that has authorization and then the token value. So I just paste in the token value and then I hit send. And now I get the results again. So that's basically how you send the authenticated user with any API request. You just put the authorization header and then whatever their token is. And to get that token in the first place, you have to send a post request to one of the auth endpoints. I use the auth with password, but there are other auth endpoints you can use as well. Okay, so before I take the next step, let me just open this back up again to all users. So API rules, and then I'll just make it to where all users can list and all users can create for what I'm about to do next. So what I want to do next is I want to go through the process of building a simple React app to show you what it looks like to work with PocketBase inside of some front-end app. So what I want to do here is I want to do npm create and then vite at latest. And I'll name this PocketBase. Let's do PocketBase client. And then I'll make this a React app. And just to keep it simple, this will be plain JavaScript, use roll down vite, and then install with npm and start now. So I'll just let it install. Should only take a second. And now I have this URL, and this opens up the default Vite and React project. So now let me open this in VS Code. So PocketBase client. And I'll start by going to app.jsx. And I'll just remove the things that I don't need. So everything between the empty tags here, I don't need. And then I'll remove the logos and I'll remove this use state. Okay, so now I want to add the things that I need to show you how to work with PocketBase. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some state for the items. So const and then items and set items. And then use state, and this will start off as an empty list. And then also I'll have a little loading message. So I'll have a loading variable for states. So loading and set loading. And then use state will be false. So that should be a lowercase u for this use state. And for the return, I want to have a simple form. So I'll just keep this really simple. It's going to have an input in it that's text. And the placeholder will just say add item. And I'll have a submit button. So type a submit, and then I'll just say add on the button. And then underneath the form, if loading is true, then I want to just have a paragraph that says loading. And then if it's not true, then that means the data should be ready. So I'll have a list of items. And I'll map over the items variable here. So items.map. And inside of here, we'll have a single item. And for each item, I want to have the item text. So first I need a key. So that would be the item ID. And then I need the actual item.text. Okay, so that should be enough here. And I have some pre-made CSS that's really simple. So I remove everything except for root here and just paste it in. And then we can see what it looks like. So let me start this in my terminal. So npm run dev. And now back at my app, this is what it looks like. So we have this field for adding an item. And then we have a button here for actually adding it. So the first thing I want to do here is I want to retrieve all the items that exist in my collection. So right now I just have 2. I just want to go ahead and grab all those and display them. So let me go back to the code. And what I'll do is I'll create a function for getting these items. So this is going to be called get items, and it's going to be an async function. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'll set loading equal to true whenever this function is called. And then I will get the response. So this will be await, and then we'll have fetch here. And then inside of the fetch, I'll just put the endpoint for sending a request, which I already have here. So I'll just copy this and paste it in here. And then for the data, this will be the response JSON. So await and then response.json. And then that will go into data. And then what I want to do is I want to set the items to be data.items. And then I'll set loading to false. So a really simple function to get the items. And I'm going to use this in a use effect because it needs to load when the page loads. So I'll import use effect. And then underneath here, I will do use effect. And then inside of the use effect, I'll create an anonymous function. And I'm just going to call get items here. And this use effect should only run once. So I'll put the empty list here. Okay, so let's go back and let's see. So now when I load the page, we see Python and JavaScript. So if I were to go here and add a new record, let's call this C++. I'll hit create. I'll go back here and refresh. And we see C++ immediately shows up because it's just pulling the items from the collection. So that's pretty straightforward. Now let's handle the case where we want to add some data into the collection. So I'll create another function. This will be called handle submit. And this will also be async. It's going to take one parameter for E, so the event. So the first thing I'll do is I'll do e.prevent default because it's going to be from a form. And then I will send a fetch request over to basically the same endpoint. But instead of a GET request, I need to send a POST request. So here in the options for fetch, I can do method will be posts. And then the headers for this will be content type. And then the actual content type is JSON. So application JSON. And then for the body, which goes after the settings. So the body is going to be json.stringify. And I want to pass just one field, a text field. And I have the E object, so that's the event. So the event has a target, which is the form. And then the form has a field called item. And then there's going to be a value on it. So let me just make sure I put name item here on the input. So this is name item. Okay, so this item corresponds to this field. And then after this fetch, I can refresh the items by doing get items. And then I'll do e.target.reset. And that will just clear out the form. And I put the body in the wrong spot. It needs to go after headers here. So I'll just cut and paste it and put a comma there. Okay, so this looks better now. And now I can try it out after I put the handle submit on the form. So on the form, I'll add on submit, and this will be equal to the handle submit function that I just created. So now let's go ahead and try. So I'll just refresh this. Looks like it's loading. So I'll add another language. We'll put Rust here, click add, and then it loads the new items. And I'll add another language here. We'll say Ruby. And how about PHP? I'll just add here. And we see the items appear here in the list. And if I refresh the collections here, I see all of the items that I added are showing up here on the dashboard. So of course they have no user associated with them because I haven't given the user ID for the user for those records. But if you wanted to, that's just passing another thing. Instead of just passing text in the body, what you can do is you can pass a user ID. So you have to keep track of the user, their token, their ID, and then you can pass all that around if you would like. So as you can see, working with PocketBase is really straightforward. We saw I easily installed it on Sevalla by just doing a one button click in the template section to get it up and running. And then I got this dashboard that I was able to create collections with. And then I was able to add all these items into the collection very easily using the API. So like I said before, there is a JavaScript library that you can use if you are using JavaScript. So you might want to use that instead of just calling APIs like I've done. But the point of this video was to just show you how it works with the API, because that will apply to any language and framework that you choose to use. So I hope this video has convinced you to try PocketBase. If you'd like to try creating your own PocketBase instance on Sevalla, you can get started now and get a $50 credit when you sign up. And also, please like this video and subscribe to this channel if you want to see more videos like this.